I can hear that. I can't text you when I'm on the camera.
Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown.
I believe you can still hear me. I don't think my dad understands the concept of a hot mic. As soon as we go, we're going. So, conversations with mom, talking to your legs, showing off water bottles. We don't need any of that once I hit that button. I'm going to bring back your speaking privileges now, Dad. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. That was your mom. That wasn't me.
Uh-huh. I saw it. Brandon just muted me. Get out of here. I'm pretty good at reading lips. I think I've gotten used to that over the years. But anyway, so here we are, a little bit later than normal. We already have more than 40 people in here watching, so that's awesome. We'll see what the turnout is. Dan had some stuff to tend to. Nick, not here yet, might not be here at all. It's that time of the year. Dan and Nick, very involved fathers. What is it, Dan? Baseball for you, softball for Nick.
Baseball and softball for me. It was baseball tonight, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got one of each. That's right.
I got one of each.
Because Nick's just overrun with estrogen. It's just flowing over him at all times.
Yep.
They have a mix there. So that's cool, though. That's cool that you guys get to do that. I know that's a big thing about our little utopia there in New Lothrop. All the dads involved. And I don't know. You guys get to become friends with guys you might not even want to be friends with, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of how it works, right?
Yeah, a lot of that going on.
Yeah, every time I go back, Rodney's like having a bunch of people over, and I'm like, that guy? We never even talked to that guy. All right, whatever. Anyway, so that's pretty cool. Scott Brown is back this week. Dad, you were gone last week handling some tax stuff, I believe, right? And
yeah, I heard all the comments. I am retired, but I can't control when they give me an appointment.
Okay, all right. And you had some fans apparently that were missing. I don't believe it for a second, but you said that some fans were reaching out and wondering where you are. So we'll go with that. And then Eric is back as well. Always good to see Eric. But Eric is getting ready to leave us pretty soon here too. I believe, or maybe it's like a month. Is it a month or so away still, or
about a month away still? A month.
Eric will be just lost in the jungle somewhere doing some wild, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers type stuff, right? You're just going to be out there just doing whatever.
I was getting a lot of preparation for that trip squared away today. So, yep.
There you go. Give the details again real quick, where and when and how long and all that stuff. It's pretty cool, obviously.
Yeah, so I'll be in the Madre de Dios region of Peru working for a tour group, and we'll be guiding a couple tours there. It's the Biodiversity Month for Peru in the Amazon, so there's a lot of nature-themed events happening at the same time. We're hoping, I'm partnering with a foundation, and they're building the brand for it, and we're going to be teaching an accelerated English class and exploring a little bit of their culture and gastronomy too. So it should be a rather well-rounded, exciting trip. I'm not sure how it's going to play out yet, but that's part of the adventure.
Yeah, and like 2 weeks, right? Something like that, give or take.
May 12th, I think, is when I'm flying, but prices change, so that could alter slightly.
Gotcha. There you go. So listen,
mixed up something like that.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah.
On my last trip, I ended up at a research center for wildlife, and I was doing some photojournalism for them. They used a couple of my caiman pictures, and then in the time after that, I posted some stories about my trips in the Amazon, and it spread to a couple of conservationalists, and that's initially where this link to the current trip spawned from.
That's crazy, man. That's awesome. And Eric said he's taking his equipment. He's going to try to do the podcast from there. I guess we'll let that play out how it plays out and see. He's already asking me, like, do you want me to write stuff while I'm there? I'm like, dude, no, just go do the jungle thing, and we'll see when you get back. But I mean, if you can make it work, that would, that would be incredible. Cool. That would be cool. So we'll see how that goes. And like I said, about a month away. So we'll have Eric a few more times before that happens. But yeah, just trying to make this work. Obviously, the 8:00 start time's not what we had been doing, but again, with these guys just donating their time, I like to make it work if they want to be here. So that's the deal, and we'll adjust if we need to. I mean, Wednesday night has kind of always been the podcast night. I think Dan, you and Nick both said it looks like it's going to be Monday and Wednesday. So I guess we'll we'll see how that goes and whatever else we might need to adjust or change. So there you have it. So yeah, absolutely. Glad to be back. Spring football game is approaching, a little over a week away, about 10 days away. We'll get into some football stuff, obviously. And some basketball news, and Eric was more on top of this than I was. It does appear, I don't think there hasn't been an official announcement from the university yet, but Dusty May, new Michigan basketball head coach, has added to his staff once again with Justin Joyner, longtime associate head coach and assistant coach out at St. Mary's. And they've been, one of the smaller schools that seems to be in the tournament every year, and they always play a good brand of basketball. And Eric, very quickly, because I don't know a lot about the guy. I know you said you did a little bit of research, but rattle off those things that you said to us that makes this look like another great hire. I mean, everywhere you look, Dusty May just seems to be like checking every box. Young dudes, energetic guys, great recruiters, really focused on offense, which, let's be honest, that's how basketball is nowadays. And Justin Joyner seems to fall right in line with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Dusty May's made quite a few favorable moves so far, and Justin Joyner seems to fall into that category as well. The last 2 seasons out at St. Mary's, he had a 75% winning percentage, and he's won back-to-back conference titles in the regular season and in the tournament. So when you combine that with a handful of top 150 recruits that he's landed, it shows that there's a lot of potential for him as a high-level coach, and I'm interested to see what he'll do at Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, landing guys ranked that high, out at a school. That, again, St. Mary's a good basketball school, but it's not Power 5. It's not big time in a lot of ways. So being able to land some top 100 guys, top 150 guys, like you said, pretty special. I'm trying to think about how old he was. He was playing in college until 2011, so that makes him mid-30s. Another younger guy. Again, the energy and the staff that Dusty May is putting together, really, really impressive so far and not quite done. And then obviously the roster build, and he's in on some really interesting players. A couple really good players from his Florida Atlantic team look like they're maybe heading towards Michigan. So just a lot to keep an eye on. Nothing for sure. Yeah, there's
the only person that I've seen for sure that's coming back is Cheddar.
Cheddar announced he will be back
from anywhere for sure, but
Cheddar announced he will be back. Vlad, what's his last name?
Golden?
Vladislav Golden. Yes, thank you. I think that's it. Or Golden. Yeah, something like that. 7'1", big dude, more of a back to the basket guy. And then they're also in on that Danny Wolf kid from Yale, who's more of a skilled big, can shoot it a little bit.
Yeah, another big guy, but
Janelle Davis, very dynamic guard from FAU. So yeah, we'll see what the roster ends up looking like. And obviously, Dusty May took part of that group to the Final Four last year, so that's a big deal at a place like Florida Atlantic.
Toledo guard Dante Madden.
Oh yes,
Toledo.
Forgot about
good call, Eric.
Almost a 20-point a game guy. I think Eric put up a story at Wolverine Digest on him. Has Michigan in his top 5, so it's coming together. They need some dominoes to start falling a little bit, but I mean, when you look at the roster now, it's all of 2 or 3 guys. So he's going to need more than that. But
this almost reminds me of when you start like a fantasy draft on a video game and you have a blank slate and it's about what you can put together.
Yeah. It's not typical.
Could go.
Even in today's NIL and transfer portal, and the coaches are like Calipari's moving on. There's just a lot of movement every year. It's more and more every year. I don't really now. Granted, I'm not following other teams as closely. I don't know if I've really seen where a guy has to build like the entire roster, like maybe 12, 13, 14 guys that are not on the team right now. So, we'll see how Dusty May handles that, but really like some of the hires that he's made. Again, his name is escaping me, but the guy from Oklahoma State came highly regarded, and now Justin Joyner in the fold as well. It looks like no official announcement yet, but another solid hire, it looks like. And yeah, I mean, people just want something to watch, because it's just been so bad. It was especially last year, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but Dusty May has been described as a program builder. I guess we'll close with this on basketball. We'll get into football and spring ball and all that stuff. Do you think there's any sense of, and Dad, you haven't said much, I'll start with you. Do you think there's any sense of timeline for how many years does Dusty May get to try to get this thing going when you look at how bad it was last year? how long Juwan had. Again, he's a member of the Fab Five. Like, you always wonder if there's a little, like, Harbaugh certainly got a bunch of leash as a former quarterback. You wonder if Juwan had a little bit extra, but I mean, what do you think is reasonable nowadays with the way basketball is and all the changes and all that stuff we've talked about?
Yeah, with all the transfers and the NIL deals, you certainly would hope they'd give him 5 years to try to turn things around.
Yeah, it just even that it sounds so long. It's not, but I'm like, I don't know. That just sounds like a long time to give any coach if they're not winning and winning right away.
Right. Well,
What if
you got to
things
look at
don't
where they're starting at too.
Yeah.
That's the big part. So
Worst record ever in Michigan history.
Yeah.
It's not going to take a lot to look like the program's moving up.
That's
There's
true.
point number one.
Great point.
And point number two is it's not football.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's a little different with football. And you made the Jim Harbaugh comparison, but it's not even this. And then they did give Jim Harbaugh leeway, obviously, but it's not the same thing. Like, if you were talking about, Kentucky or Duke basketball, then it's something different. But Michigan basketball is not Michigan football. So I feel like it's easier to give them more leash. So I think 5 years is probably a pretty good number.
Yeah, you can't I mean, really, there was some, but it wasn't like the huge majority was loud and vocal about, like, off with Juwan's head type of thing. And he had the worst year ever. Like, literally ever on paper. And people were still kind of like, maybe give him one more shot, his health and this and yeah. So that's a good point, Dan. I mean, like, people aren't going to be calling for him to be fired out of the gate like you might see. You start winning 6 or 7 games in football and, like, it's a wrap. Like, that, people aren't putting up with that.
I think it makes it kind of a good job for a guy too, because
absolutely.
When you it's still a big time school. It's in a big time conference. You're going to be able to bring guys in, but it's a football school. So, I mean, I think that makes it a little bit nicer of a job than a little bit less pressure early on, at least.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
there are a lot of very attractive elements to the job, but I think what may have bought Juwan Howard a little more time this past season was the massive success that the football team had. That certainly provided some cover for a bad year on the court.
Yeah. I mean, it was longer than ever before and more success than ever before. Tons of hype, all the fanfare. Yeah, that helped out a lot.
It made what Brandon just said possible. The fact that no one was calling for his head.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. Like, look, dude, we're in a natty. Like, who cares what's going on in the basketball court right now?
Right. I mean, I just remember some of the John Beeline days where I'd be so pumped. I'm like, oh, Michigan basketball's on tonight. Like, let's watch them shoot it. Let's watch them all the offense and all the movement and the motion and who's going to be the guy tonight. It seemed it could be 4 or 5 different dudes, every other night. He'd find these guys and turn them into lottery picks when they weren't viewed that way when they came in. And it's just so far removed from that now. I don't know, man.
We were 3 weeks past football season. We were still going, oh, they're playing basketball here. They're doing that already. Like, nobody.
Right. Look at this guy. Just mocking us. After I asked him again, this is Zach Besaw, ladies and gentlemen. I asked him if he's gonna have time tonight. He says, looks like a cool. I'm gonna kick him out. I'm putting him in timeout. I just put him in timeout. I think he can still watch, but he can't comment anymore. No, I can't. Oh, I can't even. I don't think I can remove it. I don't think I can reverse it. He might just be done for a while. Anyway. All right. So yeah, with basketball, it is just such a work in progress right now. And again, like, I didn't know a ton about Dusty May when he got hired. I've learned more since. Same with these assistants. Same with these transfer targets. I mean, you just don't know until their names kind of pop up, and there's so much changing. I don't know. 5 years, Dan, to your point, he's going to probably have a little bit more leash than you would ever see in football. And, but will it take him 5 years? Again, he is described as like this big time program builder. I don't know, Eric, are you comfortable with 5 years? Like, if it's year 3, and I guess we can expand into this a little bit too. What does that mean? Does that mean, like, okay, by year 3, you got to at least make the tournament, or year 4, you got to advance a weekend? I mean, what does that mean? And I could have asked you this too, Dad. What does that mean to say you get 5 years to do what exactly? Eric, you can kind of expand on your thoughts there.
I think year 3, like you said, is a perfect place to start, because it probably isn't going to take Dusty May 5 years to show whether he can get the job done at Michigan or not. Yeah. And with so much variance nowadays in college sports, things happen at a much quicker pace. So I don't know if 5 years of a middling team will be enough to keep his job. I think that he needs to make the tournament rather quickly. Year 2, I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan could put something together. Year 3 is a safer bet, but we should definitively know something about whether it's successful or not by that juncture, I think.
Yeah, Dad, what do you think? You said 5 years. What was that? What did that mean when you said that?
At the 5-year mark, better be fighting for a Big Ten championship.
Yeah, certainly.
And maybe making the dance for the 3rd year in a row.
Yeah, I was just looking.
Starting with year 3.
Yeah,
it's worse than I thought.
Pre-transfer portal, you always went, well, you got to have 4 years just to be playing with your own guys, but
yeah,
he's got no guys. Every guy's going to be kind of his guy because he don't have anybody. So anybody he brings in, even through the transfer portal, still kind of his guy, right?
Yeah, that changes it. That changes it completely.
It does change the dynamic, I think.
Yeah, there's no more getting your.
Even the way that you consider if a player is being developed well or not changes and is accelerated. You don't get those 3 or 4 year projects. You have to determine if a coach can improve a player mid-season in 3 months or not.
It's crazy to think about that some of the guys that Michigan fans revered and just loved under John Beilein might not have ever been a thing because of the portal. Like your Xavier Simpsons of the world, and even like Astauskas, I think he was only there 2 years, but did he come back for his junior year? I can't remember. But they, left early because they were doing so well. But you just wonder, like after 1 year, Stauskas is like, bro, I'm shooting 50% from 3 and I'm only playing 11 minutes. Like I'm out of here, even though he wasn't quite ready for that. And he comes back another year and then he becomes a top 10 pick. Trey Burke was kind of similar to that. Karis LeVert was a huge example of that. Yeah. I mean, you just wonder if those guys would have even been at Michigan, and it's so different now with the transfer portal being there. So I don't know. We'll see. I look back because
coach, times are different. You might as well get a guy who's
just roll with it
times rather than
roll with it. Beilein certainly did it. Beilein certainly did it a certain way for decades, and that's a lot to change, man.
Yeah.
And he didn't
definitely change. I think you guys can probably all agree that Juwan unluckily had a lot of guys leave earlier than they should have.
Yeah.
They left too early, a bunch of them.
Diabate, Houston.
Yep, he did. Kids. We talked about this. I don't remember if it was on the podcast or not. I know I've talked to a couple people about this, but foreign-born players can't get NIL. So Moussa Diabate, Caleb Houston was Canadian. There was a couple other guys who there's no like 1 more year fund for these guys. They can't come back and get any of that stuff. So they're like, well, you know what? I might not be quite ready for the NBA, but at least I'm playing ball and getting paid.
Seems like a weird rule to me.
It is a very strange thing. And maybe it will be.
I'd like to hear the reasoning behind it. Like, what are you trying to prevent here?
Yeah, maybe at some point it will be altered, but I believe that's still the case. If it's wrong, I'm sure somebody will let me know. But that was the case for sure. I remember I found it out with football, actually, but then it seemed to maybe even apply more with basketball with smaller rosters and probably more foreign-born guys playing basketball than football. But yeah, weird rule. Anyway, and I almost gave him too much credit. I was like, yeah, okay, so Juwan, coming off this year, Dusty May inherited a team they have like 12 wins. They had 8 wins. They went 8-24. And so to Dan's point, like, good Lord, like Dusty May is just going to roll the balls out there and they'll almost have a better season. So you would hope that it just continues to be, this year. I don't know if you want to put a number on it. It's too hard to do that yet. They don't even have a roster yet, but like, got to be double digit. You got to get double digit wins. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I would think. And, there's been fast turnarounds in basketball. This is the plus side of all this other weird stuff. NIL, transfer portal. You can have a pretty damn good roster the very next season. Rebuilds are faster.
It's not going.
Yeah, he's got a shot at it.
I know.
There's gonna be a couple kids leaving Kentucky. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, they'll leave Kentucky.
What was was it Will Wade? Used to be at LSU, broke a bunch of rules, got fired, I believe, and he was just at McNeese State. And they had a season almost just like Michigan's last year. I think they might have been the same record, 8-24. And he went on his very first hiring press conference and was like, "We lost 24 games this year. Next year we're winning 24." And they won 29 and made the tournament. Had this big, huge run in their conference tournament. So it is doable. Now, Michigan's not McNeese State, but The Big Ten's a little stiffer than that, but we'll see. I'm excited about Dusty May.
Yeah.
And what he's doing. All right.
I have a basketball question real quick, if you guys don't mind.
Let's hear it.
With all the open spots on the roster, how would you prefer that Dusty May fills those between high school prospects and then kids from the transfer portal? 50-50, 25-75? What sounds right to you?
That is a good question. I think now you go get dudes, men. You get a 22, 23, 24-year-old. Find probably, I don't know if I'd say as many as possible from the portal, but I think it should be slanted portal. I think
there.
Yeah, I think for this first year, I think that's you can't count on freshmen to do the things that third and fourth year guys are able to do and comfortable doing. But you got to get what you can get. It's not like this just we want all portal guys, let's go do it. Like they got to be there. There's got to be a fit. He's got to see a plan. But I would lean portal.
Well, how many guys do you normally bring in out of high school on a normal year? Right?
Yeah, big classes are
you don't want to bring in more high school guys than that, because then that screws up your recruiting down the road.
Yeah, right? 5 is like a big class.
That'd be like the cap. Like I'd be leaning more like maybe 4 high schoolers and the rest from the portal.
Yeah. That's true too. You have, well, typically you don't have that much room to bring in more than that.
No, you don't. But yeah.
This is
you don't want to go crazy out of high school kids.
Everybody loves.
Then, so you're stuck with that class for a while. Maybe I guess they can leave, but
now they'll just leave too, and then you're doing.
They can leave before they ever go to a practice these days.
Yeah, and I think the letters of intent have already been signed, so guys have to, it's not like the recruiting pool for guys that will be freshmen next year is wide open. A lot of those guys, some of them might even be on campus already as early enrollees. So it's gonna have to be portal guys, I think, and that's probably what you see when you have like a rebuild and a brand new coach and stuff like that at a new program. So it's a good question, and I think, was it Deion Sanders? He said he doesn't even really care about recruiting high school kids that much right now. He's like, we're just going to the portal. We're just getting portal guys. That's all I care about. I don't even want to recruit high schoolers. He didn't say it quite like that, but
he didn't make a single in-home visit last year, from what I heard.
I saw that.
That's wild.
He said, how did he related it to when he was a player. He's like, you know what? He said something like, we had roaches running around and our place was a mess. I didn't want no coaches coming to see me, so I'm not going to see them. They can come see what we got where they're going to be. He said, I'm never going to be at their house again. Why am I going there? And I'm just like, dude, I don't think that's it.
That's a funny answer.
I don't know that parents are going to love that, but
but
I don't think the kids are going to care.
Yeah, probably not.
The student athletes are going to care.
Probably not. All right. So there's our little basketball discussion. Not bad, actually. We got 20 minutes of basketball. That's pretty solid. I wasn't sure how much we'd have to talk about there, but we'll finish up with football as usual. That is what butters the bread, as they say, and the spring game is just 10 days away. I will be there. Eric, it sounds like you're coming. I think you got some ducks in a row and got it all lined up.
Yeah, today was big for that. I hope to be down there, and I'm very excited. 10 days away.
Yeah. I hope it's nice out. Eric's going to be shooting photos. I'll be up in the booth, and we'll see how that kind of works out. Again, this is all if we don't get shot down by Michigan sports information, which you never know. It has happened before, but that's the plan, is that Eric and I will both be there, and maybe somebody else too to help in the booth. We'll just see how that plays out. Dan, I know you attend a lot of games. You said the spring game is a maybe right now.
Maybe. Yeah.
If I take quarterback off the board, because everybody wants to know who that's going to be. He might not even be on the roster right now. What's the number one thing you're going to be watching for in the spring game? And again, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We haven't seen ones against ones before. Harbaugh's never done that. They do the draft. Will it be different under Sherrone Moore? Maybe. I don't know. But they draft the team, so then it's competitive, but you don't see the first 5 linemen together. You don't see the 2 pass rushers come. It's all mixed up. So I don't know how well we'll be able to answer this question, but Dan, you do go to a lot of games over the past how many years, and maybe spring games too. I'm not sure. You can talk about that if you want. But what would you want to see?
Definitely a handful of those.
What would you want to see first and foremost?
Just not a position specifically, but defense. Like the offense, I mean, you'll see some plays and you'll see. But
it's still vanilla, though.
The defense is what has the chance to be really still elite this year.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'd want to see the most of. I mean, and like you said, you're not going to get the starting unit out there together because of how they do it. I assume they're going to do it the same way. Is that what you've heard? Or
I haven't really heard. I mean, Sharon
okay.
he's I love the dude. Like I've said it before. I've known him since his Central Michigan days.
Yeah.
He might say less than Harbaugh. He doesn't give a lot away.
He's a busy guy.
He doesn't give a lot away. He keeps it very close to the vest, and he's got a lot of he's just got a lot of coach speak. And he's quite busy. He probably feels like he's drinking from a fire hose, and I totally understand that. But in the few, even when he going back to the last couple of years as an assistant, he just never said a lot in terms of like giving stuff away. He's great at the mic, but he's not going to tip his hand.
Yeah. But I just think there's more depth on the defense too. So when you do start playing it the way they're going to play it, and you're going to have ones and twos mixed in on both squads and different things that way, I still think you're going to see a lot of standout, really solid play on that side. But that's what we want to see, because I think there's going to be a lot of unknowns on the offensive side, and on the defensive side, I think they could still be top 5 kind of defense. So I hope that stands out. That's what I hope stands out.
Well, Dad, I'll ask you. It is the spring game is on TV. No, you will not pick it up with your antenna that you shove in the top of the door. So I don't know how you'll be able to watch it, but I mean, what would you? Again, it's tough because it's not going to be starters out there. We don't think.
It is televised.
It's televised.
Yeah, it is.
I don't remember if it's live. I think it is live.
I think it's
Is
live.
it on the
Yeah.
Big Ten Network?
Live. I think it's Big Ten Network, and I think it's live. They stagger some of the other ones because they're
Big Ten Network. I get that in the camper.
Well, there you go. My dad
There we
might be
go.
watching from the camper on my sister's YouTube TV account. Sounds great. But if you do get a chance to watch it, what's interesting to you heading into this season? Oh yeah, it's
I'm
on
interested
Fox.
in-
That's right. It's on
Oh
Fox.
Yeah, I'm interested in the offensive line.
He's
and
right.
the wide
It is on
receivers.
Fox.
Offensive line, wide receivers.
Yeah, seeing who's stepping up and catching the ball, and see how the offensive line gels together, because they're going to be all new basically.
Yep, that's going to be our first topic when we jump into some of the specifics about spring ball. I gotta guess, and I think it's going to be right, but I don't know. We will see. And Eric, you're going to be, hopefully, again, if all things play out exactly how we want, you'll be on the sidelines shooting photos. That's your first time doing that, is it not?
I did it for Scout as an intern a long time ago, but only one game.
Okay, so you'll be back down there for the first time in a long time. I had a chance to do it for 2 seasons. It's freaking awesome. It's awesome being down on the sidelines. You really feel like you didn't even watch the game though sometimes, which is interesting. You're behind the lens and you're level, and it's a completely different viewing experience. But since you will be very close to it down there, what do you think you might be able to pick up? What are some things you hope to kind of find out and learn about them while you're down there?
So I debated on selecting the offensive line for this question because they're replacing so many starters.
Yeah.
That's a difficult undertaking, no doubt. But personally, I think that Rod Moore meant a lot to this team's defense, and particularly because of his position at safety. He sees the whole field, and he has a lot of experience making plays. So losing him unexpectedly, I think that's going to be difficult to replace on the fly, and I'm quite curious to see how the secondary works together.
It's interesting that I've got 2 great segues here. Dad brought up the O-line, and you brought up Rod Moore, and that was 2 of the things I planned on talking about in depth today. We got a chance to talk to Lamar Morgan today at the press conference, the DB's coach. He's coaching corners and safeties. That was something that Sharon Moore specifically wanted. He wanted one guy to coach both of those position groups, which that's not that tall of a task. I don't think there's a lot of guys that do both. Sometimes you will see it, one guy on corners, one guy on safeties. In fact, that's what Michigan has had in the past. But you've got Lamar Morgan now kind of handling the whole back end back there. He's been a defensive coordinator before. I think he's in his mid-30s as well, another younger dude. He talked about having young kids running around and his family being in Ann Arbor, and they I think he said the day they got here, his 4 little ones were running around out in the snow and they couldn't believe it. And he was like, yeah, that's not real snow yet. Just wait a little while. But it was really cool talking to him. He seemed like, and again, we had him for 20 minutes. I'm not in the meeting rooms. I'm not out at practice. I almost tweeted out, I don't know that much about this guy, but I might say he's the most passionate coach on the roster. He just kind of like exuded this, like, just the way he talked about Will Johnson, the way he talked about Rod Moore, the way he talked about making guys better, the way he talked about wanting to contribute to such he left a coordinator position to come be a DB's coach at Michigan. He talked about the only way that he was going to take, quote unquote, a step back, being a coordinator, going to a position coach, was if it was at an elite place. He said probably 2 or 3 schools I would have done that for, and Michigan was one of them. And so you just kind of got this sense that he is just like, he's just all in. Like he's leaving nothing, leaving nothing behind, kind of pouring it all out there. And I'd love that. I was hoping to show a video clip. I can't get it to upload. I might still try to mess with it a little bit while you guys are talking. But I just love the way that he talked about Will Johnson, and then especially Rod Moore, to Eric's point. And we talked about Rod Moore last week, and it made me like even more bummed out that he's hurt. Like hearing Coach Morgan talk about him today was a bummer. He called him Coach Moore. He called Rod Moore Coach Moore. So now you've got Sharon and Rod both. I guess we won't spend a ton of time on it because we did it last week, but the closer we get to the spring game, and then obviously when fall rolls around, I mean, like, this Rod Moore thing just sucks more and more. But he said that the day that Rod Moore got hurt, the very next day they were at practice or meetings, and Rod was the first one there. Like he hasn't missed a beat. He hasn't missed anything. I don't think he's gotten surgery yet. I think he kind of hinted at that, which they don't usually do. That's probably like a rookie mistake. I was like, oh, they don't usually talk about that. But anyway, long story short, thoughts on this Rod Moore thing again. I mean, is the secondary like, is it going to take a lot to make up for what he can do? And, how big of a deal is it? Because you like to say, well, dude, it's Michigan, man. They got players. They'll have, but the way he was talking about Rod Moore today just made me think even harder. Like, damn it, dude. Like that is not good.
Yeah, Morgan's definitely got a bigger job ahead of him now than when he took the job. Because I mean, he inherited obviously a first round talent at the corner position, and somebody with the kind of experience that Rod Moore has on the back end. Now he's got to replace that, so he's got a bigger job ahead of him. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last week, but yeah, I don't know where you replace that kind of experience with off this roster. I mean, they got guys. They're bringing them in. They're high recruit kind of guys, but the kind of experience that Rod Moore had and the leadership on the field, I don't know how you replace.
So he specifically mentioned Makari Page, which, in terms of how did he describe? I think he called him soft spoken, but he just doesn't talk a lot. He's not a super vocal guy. Rod Moore was much more the like barking stuff out, talking on the field, communicating. And that, everybody does it in a different way. That's not a bad thing per se, but they lost that vocal, leader in Rod Moore. And now they're asking Makari Page to step into that role, which he's capable of, but it's just not natural for me. He's just not a big talker. Then he talked about Quentin Johnson, and the guy that he mentioned the most as maybe being able to step up and just have to take a big, big leap was Zeke Berry. And so that's a guy that played quite a bit last year. I mean, not a lot, not a huge snap count in meaningful minutes, but he did get a chance to play. I don't know, man. I mean, if you're asking Eric, if you're asking Zeke Berry to be Rod Moore, what do you think? What's the first thought you have?
I don't think that's a one-man job, honestly. You're probably going to see a couple different defensive backs get a shot to claim the position. But when you lose Rod Moore, I think other players around need to step up too. It increases the onus on Will Johnson to be even more of a lockdown corner and just remove his receiver from the option for the offense.
And he mentioned him as well as a vocal leader, somebody who's just so confident in what he does and, just getting better every day. It's not the same position, but you just need more voices back there when you take a guy off the field like Rod Moore. Dad, I know it's going back a ways. It's going back a long ways, but you did used to coach, not at the highest level in the world, but how important is it, do you think, to have a point guard of the defense back there at safety? I mean, can a linebacker do it? Can Mason Graham do it from D tackle? I mean, or is that like a very specific thing, at safety?
I think more so it's usually a linebacker, but Yeah, like Eric said, it'll have to be by committee for a little while and see who steps up and can fill that role. I think he's going to be back halfway through the season.
Yep.
I really do.
That would obviously be best case scenario. He if it is, I don't think they haven't said what the injury was. I think most of the buzz was that it was an ACL and that's why he's out, and he's out indefinitely. And again, Coach Morgan mentioned surgery today, which I don't think he was supposed to do, but he did, and it's whatever. It's fine. Everybody knows Rod Moore's hurt. Yeah. If it is an ACL, that's probably the worst thing for a knee. It happened in mid-April or mid-March. 8 months. You're talking November. You're talking maybe late October. He could come back and catch the last 4 or 5 games of the season, or if they make a playoff run or the Big Ten title game. Who knows?
Been done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was his passion his passion for the game and the way he works, the work ethic he has. I could see him coming back early.
Yeah, his personality is so important.
The one thought I had was that if he hasn't had the surgery yet, why? Like usually you hear about guys maybe almost even the next day, or like swelling goes down and they're in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there some long-term plan here for Rod where they're like, look, man, it's not happening this year, so just rehab, do this, do that. I don't know.
Maybe if it's only a partial tear, they'd be less inclined to go through surgery, and there's a debate period. I truly don't know.
I know there was all this talk about JJ's shoulder last year, how he tried all these different things so he didn't have to go under the knife. Now, granted, an ACL is different than a lot of shoulder stuff, but who knows? Yeah, we're speculating at this point. We know he's hurt. We don't know for sure what the injury is. But I mean, that would be incredible. That would be incredible if he somehow made some triumphant return back to the field for the Ohio State game or something in Columbus. That's storybook type stuff. But we'll see what happens. Big. We'll see what happens with Rod Moore, and just sucks, man. It feels a lot like what happened with Ronnie Bell a few years ago. Where first game he's your senior leader, and now he's out for the year, and you're just like, leading up to what should have been a big breakout year for him, and just super important to what Michigan's trying to do. And again, to Dan's earlier point, the defense has everything it needs to be elite again, and he would have been a major part of that. And sucks that he's not going to be there. As you guys were talking, that gave me some time to work on this thing. I might be able to get that video clip up now. I got it. Let's see if it uploads. Then it might slow us down here just a minute. So it was really cool to hear Lamar. I don't remember even which clip I picked. I don't know if it's the Rod Moore one, or he talked a lot about Will Johnson. He talked about actually the clip that I picked. I remember this one. I liked this one a lot. I didn't realize this, but Lamar Morgan was the DB coach for Jesse Minter at Vanderbilt when they went 2-10. And I remember when Michigan hired Jesse Minter, and I'll be honest, I'm like, dude, Vandy, why'd they hire? And he even says it. He says it himself in this video. He says, I know what you guys were all thinking. Everybody was thinking it. And he kind of goes into why it worked and what he learned. And I don't know. I just thought this was a pretty cool angle, and how he kind of owned up to the fact that they sucked. I mean, granted, Vanderbilt's not like exactly a powerhouse in the SEC, right, but it's he kind of talked about it. It's Vandy. They've had some good years, but they're lean. They're few and far between. So I thought this was pretty good. It's only about a minute long, so hopefully everybody out there who's watching too can hear this and it sounds good and stuff. But they make us do the press conferences inside Glick Fieldhouse from about 15 feet away from the coaches, and the big blowers are going everywhere. Like half the time we get out of there, you can't even hear what they said. But he was actually pretty loud. So hopefully this will come through.
Right. So as y'all know, right, y'all probably had they got this guy Vandy that was 2-10 as a DC at Michigan. How the hell did that happen, right? So I was part of it. So, sometimes you think all the work that you put in doesn't show on the field sometimes, right? It's a building process. But from afar, just being able to watch, Michigan, I saw toughness, blue collar. But it's not just blue collar. A lot of people take blue collar not talented. It's blue collar mentality with talented players. I think that's the unique thing about Michigan when I'm watching on tape. I think everybody's on the same scoreboard. Media, fans, coaches, it's all on one scoreboard. Everybody's doing their part to win on Saturdays, right? So y'all do a great job. Media, nutrition, everybody here is pulling in the same direction. I think that's unique. A lot of places that I watch and cover, I try to watch a lot of football. It doesn't feel that way. So that's something that I found out being here for a short time. Also talking to Coach Benner and all those guys, you kind of just see it each and every day, throughout the building.
There was that. He said, how the hell did that happen? 2-10, and he talked about the process. I remember why I picked that clip now. Once he started talking, I wrote it down. I thought it's going to be the name of the article. Actually, when I put him up, I'm going to go through and type up some of his stuff. But blue collar mentality with talented players. I just thought that belongs on a shirt. And he talked about the culture at Michigan and again why he left a coordinator position to be a position coach at a place like Michigan. And I think that does kind of embody what Jim Harbaugh built and what Sharon Moore hopes to continue. Is they have really good players, but they love football. They want to. The way he talked about Will Johnson today was like a perfect example of exactly that thing, a blue collar mentality with an elite player. He said Will Johnson acts like he's a freshman who's never going to play. He's in there. He wants more reps. He wants to do this. He wants to do that. He runs and celebrates with walk-on guys just as much as he does all the scholarship guys. And he's like, this kid's maybe the best cornerback in the country, might be a top 5 draft pick. He's like, I don't even think he knows it. He just walks around like he's trying to get on the field all the time. And I just thought that was cool. And so Lamar Morgan, I don't know, again, there's a minute of him speaking, Dan. I don't know. Is everything I'm saying, did it come through? Because I felt like when I watched him for 20 or 30 minutes, it was like so obvious.
Yeah, you don't hear him say a whole lot to think, the players are going to love him. I don't think there's any doubt there. That's a big hurdle there when you get to position coaches like that. I mean, especially when it comes to recruiting, but even once they're on the team, then like the play, I think that's what stands out about this Michigan team over the last 3 seasons is how together they are with the team and with the coaching staff. And I think he'll fit right in that way. I can see that after 60 seconds of hearing him talk.
Yeah. And so I do this little trick. I didn't realize this, but like even the big like newsy cameras, their cameras are this big. They come walking in. They do this. They record, and if there's something good, they put their hand in front of the lens and just take a quick screenshot of it. So that way, when you go back and look through all of your clips, you can tell which ones you like. Anyway, I've started doing that. I record a clip, and I'm like, oh, that was good. I'll take a picture of my hand, and then same thing. So then when I go back, I did like every clip. Like every clip of his, I had my freaking hand in front. I'm like, I can't use all of these. The Michigan only allows us to use 5 minutes of stuff, which is a horrible rule. But so we get Tony Alford for 25 minutes. We get Lamar Morgan for almost a half an hour, and we can only use 5 minutes total from what they've said. It's the worst. Like fans should be able to have all of that stuff, in my opinion. They would love these guys even more. But that's another story for another day. Dad, he's about half your age, maybe a little more than half. What do you feel about? First of all, I guess Sharon kind of went across the board like this. He hired a bunch of dudes in their mid-30s, got a little bit younger. Hired Wink. Now Wink is close to your age. He's I think 59 or 60. But you hear Lamar Morgan talk. He's going to be working with the DBs, trying to bring that group along, which is actually a pretty experienced group. First thoughts on just how he kind of conducted himself.
He got to watch a lot of good defenses on the opposite side of the field.
Yeah.
So hopefully he was paying attention.
Yeah, and working with Minter, which again, I guess I didn't know that when he got hired. I had never heard of him before. He was at Louisiana last year, so he wasn't with Vanderbilt anymore. So I didn't put that connection together. But certainly would have seen other good defenses while he was in the SEC, and then he was a coordinator. So he's bringing a ton of experience to a position group that is already pretty good, and he's trying to find. I just like that he was honest too. He's like, well, there's some guys cemented. He's like, Will Johnson's going to start. Makari's going to start. I'm like, dude, I don't think I've ever heard a Michigan coach say that before. The word start. Like they don't say shit like that ever.
No.
And he just said it. I'm like, cool. Let's talk to this guy some more. And they said they were still like just doing running rotations for a lot of the other spots to find some guys. So that's Eric, when you see, you see him being honest like that and some of the things I've said, and he talks about Will Johnson. I think that's one of the only question marks really on the team is the cornerback opposite Will Johnson. I guess maybe now nickel and unfortunately Rod Moore gets hurt. So like he had, to Dan's point, he's got a much bigger job now than at the beginning of the offseason. Like, what are your thoughts on, him being able to handle it just from the little bit you saw, what I've said, and then thinking about his background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it would be cliche to say he seemed genuine and authentic, although he did. So I would reframe that as saying he was very straightforward and he seems to have tenacity. And those are two qualities that I think are going to appeal on a very high degree to the Michigan team. It makes him more relatable. You don't think that he's trying to sell you a line, or it just makes him more trustworthy.
I mean, like I said, it was 20 minutes. I'm not in the meeting rooms. I'm not on the field, but I'm like, this dude is is oozing passion. You could just tell when he talked about the guys and the reason why he came to Michigan. Again, going from a place like Louisiana to Michigan is a step up, but he was a coordinator. I mean, like his next stop theoretically should have been a head coaching job. Instead, he kind of, like he even called it. He's like, I went backwards to become a position coach again because of this place and, how special it could be. I mean, you got to think about it. These young dudes, Sharon's 37, I think this guy's 35. They might see it this like, dude, we're going to be a group for the next 20 years. Like Sharon's going to crush it. You're going to do this. I'm going to do that. You never know. Or like you do see, they'll just continue to climb the ladder and be head coaches, in their own right. So yeah. I don't know, man. It's pretty exciting. Obviously, spring football is not going to give us a huge dose of real football, but it's football in April, I guess. I don't know. Like, Dad, football football adjacent. Dad, we've talked about this before with recruiting. I know you don't follow it like super, super close, but how into the spring game do you get? I mean, do you get it? You didn't know it was on TV. Now that you do, like,
yeah, I didn't. Shows you how much of a super fan I am. I didn't even know it was on TV.
But how excited can you get about the spring game?
Like 50%. I guess about 50% of what I would be for the regular season. It's like I said. I want to see who's going to be catching the ball and how the offensive lines are doing. So
yeah.
It's got some importance this year, especially with a new basically all new coaching staff.
There's going to be a lot more interest around it than most years.
The young coaches that Coach Moore is bringing in, saying he's the head coach at Michigan. Why can't I be in 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, no kidding.
Maybe that's why he took a step back from being a coordinator to a defensive backs coach. So 7 years, I could be the head coach at Michigan.
Yeah, or somewhere like that. I mean, he's not he's not a Michigan guy, so he's not tied to it with love like some people would be from there. But
right, this is how you become a Michigan man, by being a coach there. So if you didn't play, you become a coach there, and that brings you in. You learn what Michigan is.
I looked this up earlier today. I think he's a Texas guy, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean that's 7 years ago, Sharon Moore was coaching tight ends at Central. Now he's the head coach at Michigan. Like that's a fast climb, and that's the top of college football, and it is possible. And yeah, some of these other guys, I'm certain would be thinking the same thing. So yeah, we'll have to see how that looks.
Like you said, he's got the passion, and he sounds like he's intelligent, so he can go a long ways if he wants to.
Yeah. I think him not even taking a lateral job, but like he mentioned, a demotion in a sense, speaks to the culture of the Michigan program that it would still be attractive to him.
Right.
They still do have. That's what I was looking for too. So he's also considered the defensive passing game coordinator. So he's got a little bit more of responsibility than just coaching the DBs. I'm sure he'll be super, super involved with Wink, and he talked about that too. He talked about how lucky he feels to work with and for Wink. And he's talked to people with the Giants. He's talked to people with the Ravens about, what Wink likes to do and different personnel that he's used. He talked about how in a team meeting, Wink called Eric Weddle just to talk to him about Rod Moore. And I think there was a story about that earlier this year. I don't know, man. It just sounds so freaking cool. And by the way, I meant to say this. He was super, he stuck around and just talked to us. Also has never happened before with a Michigan coach. He was talking about the places he was eating in Ann Arbor and how he's a big foodie and how he wants to do this and do that. Thanked us all, thank you for covering us. And I'm just like, this this is a guy who came from Louisiana and is now at Michigan and will probably be over that sentiment in a month. But that was really cool. And then when I got home, I tweeted something about him. He followed me. I sent him a message. He texted me right back. I was just blown away by this dude today. Didn't know a thing about him before today, really, and went in and I just walked away super impressed. And so, again, he's coaching the DBs. It's not like he is a coordinator or a play caller, but I think, Dan, to your point, like the players are going to love him. I just felt that like immediately. I think that was actually in the tweet that I put out, that I just thought he just conducted himself in a way that you can tell, like, yeah, this dude's going to be just fine. And the fact that he's already been a coordinator means he's kind of been already at the top of what he could do as an assistant coach, albeit at a smaller school. So anyway, he's from, I don't know how to say it, Copperas Cove, Texas. Played at Louisiana Lafayette, I believe, and that's where he was at. Got his master's at Texas A&M, coached there. So anyway, Texas guy. So to my dad's point, maybe he's the head coach at Texas in 5 years, and he's looking at that the same way Sharon did what he did, and not a bad place to start out and kind of get your feet wet at Michigan with some high level stuff. So, All right, last but not least, I almost skipped over it again. I almost skipped over the offensive line stuff again, but I do want to start. Or do want to finish with that, because outside of the quarterback battle, I think same thing my dad said. I think it's the most important and most intriguing thing and to watch develop coming into this season. Michigan sent 6 dudes to the combine. Crazy. You only start 5. They sent 6 because some they had different combinations of starters throughout the year and some guys got hurt. So all new. Every single player that's going to be starting this year is going to be a new guy. I mean, there are dudes who have started, but there's no regular returning starters on the line. Everybody else is gone. So I'll start right there. Dad, how you mentioned it as one of the things you want to see. How big of a worry is that? Michigan wants to run the ball 1,000 times a game. They don't really have a quarterback right now that we know of. And now they also have to break in 5 brand new offensive linemen. Oh, by the way, with a new offensive line coach as well, Grant Newsome, who's like 27 or 28 years old.
Well, the good thing is we still have Sharon Moore.
Yeah. So that's a pretty big thing.
Yep, that'll make that unit gel very quickly, I would think. Yeah,
I mean, and he took over as kind of like he played the position in college, but he was I don't think he ever coached O-line at Central. And then he got to Michigan. He was tight ends, and then he moved to O-line. And you're like, well, now he's at least back at his natural position that he played. How's he going to do? And he wins 2 Joe Moore Awards in a row for the best O-line, and the running attack is elite. And then, it's his identity.
I think it's a good thing he's still there, so he can dictate how that group comes together.
And I think Jim Harbaugh said he's been saying for a few years that Grant Newsome was going to be maybe one of the better coaches out of all of them. And he just loved the guy. Went on and on about his ability. Yeah, Dan, go ahead. Yeah, Newsome.
That's what I was going to say. I think Grant Newsome will be great. They got this new young coach that there's a lot of hype around. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh was high on him, but he's also been on multiple 30 under 30 lists and things like that for coaches over the last few years, or 35 under 30, whatever they were. There are a couple different ones. I can't remember exactly what they were, but I think they got to bring this new coach in with all this hype, but they also didn't lose their coach. Like, he's still there. Yeah. He's not their position coach now, but he's still there, just like Scott just said. So I think that'll be huge. And I mean, normally when you look at a depth chart and go, there's not a lot of starting experience there. But look what they're following up. I mean, these guys did play. It's not like there's nobody on the roster with any game experience. There's guys that have played. You only got 2 guys with real starting experience. Yeah. But I mean, I think there's a lot of guys, when you have the kind of guys that are going out the door, if you didn't have those studs, like these guys have more playing time. So you can't just go, well, they're just not very good because they haven't started. No, they played behind NFL guys. 5 of them. I think there's going to be enough guys on this roster to put together still a pretty dang solid offensive line. Yeah, I agree, Eric. That's something that I'll be interested to pick your brain on a little bit if you do get to be on the sidelines. Just kind of how these dudes look, up close. I mean, the linemen. Sometimes you get next to them, you're like, well, that guy's a stud. You can just see they're built different. They look a little different. Michigan
Hasn't had a ton of guys like that, but we'll see what this group looks like. I guess how closely and again, this is where I really did wish they ran the ones because it would be awesome to see. They're not giving any secrets away. I mean, come on, man. Like, like I said, I'm about to put my predicted starting lineup up there, and I'll be shocked if it's not damn close. So, like, if I'm doing that here down in my basement, I'm pretty sure like the staffs at the other Big Ten schools can probably figure some stuff out. But Eric, I mean, how closely are you going to be watching something like that when you're down on the field? And again, high chance that you don't see your starting tackles together and your starting guards and center, but still something to look for.
Sure. So I was scanning the roster a few days ago to try to figure out the answer to this question on who I think could start for Michigan on the O-line next season. And one thing that I noticed is there's 6, 7, maybe 8 different players who are 6'5" or taller, while also being 310 pounds or heavier. So for a team that will probably like to employ some road graders out on the offensive line, they have the size to do it. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, they're not small. Like, that wasn't an issue under Brady Hoke, but he never had depth like this, even though he was like a trenches guy. I mean, last year's team was I wrote an article about him. Like, this is maybe the deepest offensive line I've ever seen. I mean, because you're seeing it. 6 of them are gone, and they might be, like Dan said, just fine. Like, literally just fine this year. They might not miss a beat. That's not insulting to the group leaving. But it is kind of a testament to how they've been brought along. And yeah, you've got these guys that have learned from the best, 6 NFL guys, and we'll see what it looks like. So I think Dan said it. 2 guys that have significant starting experience. One of them is, I think if Dan and I are on the same wavelength here, one of them's a transfer. Yeah. But you do have Miles Hinton.
Well, they're both transfers, but one transferred this year.
One transferred this year, correct. Yes. Yeah. Miles Hinton made most of his starts out at Stanford. He started the year last year as Michigan's starter, and then was moved around a little bit, got dinged up a little bit, and just kind of fell to the background a little bit. And obviously Michigan's line was fine, but he was the guy out of the gate to start along the offensive line. So, and
he made 4 starts last year, right? 4 or 5.
Yeah, something about halfway. Yeah. And then he got, like I said, he got hurt, and he still played down the stretch. He became like the jumbo, and jumbo certainly applies. He's 6'7", 340. Grant Newsome said that now if you've got an offensive line coach saying that he might be the next first round tackle, he's got to be a starter. You can't say that about a guy and then have him on the bench.
Morgan would have just said it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's the starter. You could put he's cemented in. So I think he's your left tackle.
Yep.
Josh Preby, the transfer from Northwestern, has started 28 or 29 games at left guard.
29 games left guard, yep.
So I think that's your left guard.
In
the Big Ten at Northwestern. I'll skip over center for now because it seems like there's only one guy there too. But so Giovanni El Hadi is the other guard. He's also made starts at left guard, but to me, like you just don't move Preby out of that spot.
No, he'll start.
He's too good there, right? Like that's what it's got to be. And El Hadi's versatile enough. I think he's played at right guard, but he's only made starts at left. I think that's right. So I think he's your right guard. And then it sounds like Greg Crippen is the guy at center. He's really the only one that everybody talks about. Yep. He's got some reps before behind the 2 transfer guys the last couple of years, Oluwatimi, and then Drake Nugent last year. And Crippen was kind of the first guy in both years.
He's played in 16 or 17 games, yeah.
Played at IMG Academy. I know there was always like that thought, like, oh, him and JJ, they got this thing. Well, then Michigan went out and found phenomenal guys in the transfer portal, so it never happened for Crippen. Yeah. To Dan's point, not that he wasn't good enough, but like, damn, dude, look who he was behind. Like it was what it was.
Like Remington caliber centers.
Yes, exactly. So I think he's your guy at center. I think the biggest line of question marks is at right tackle. You've got, I don't know, 2 or 3. Jeff Percy has made a start at left tackle. I don't know if he's played at all at right tackle. Actually, I could look back at they usually break that down a little bit. I don't know if he's played on the right side at all. Maybe. And then you've got some young guys. I think ultimately, though, I think it's Andrew Gentry. He's another guy that gets talked about a little bit more than the rest. He was a big time recruit for Michigan when he came through, but then he did a 2-year mission. So that for a lineman, that takes some time to get back. And I think he's finally kind of back. He's been at Michigan for 2 or 3 seasons now. Yeah. And he's another horse. He's like 6'8", like 315. I mean,
he looks the part.
These dudes are all,
Percy has that one start on him, but other than that, they have basically the same playing time. I mean, they've both gotten in at about 10 games.
So if it's me, and again, I'm not in the practices, but just on paper, it kind of makes the most sense. You've got Hinton at left tackle, Preeby at left guard, Crippen at center, El Hadi at right guard, Gentry at right tackle. And that's, again, to Eric's point, you've got 6'7", 6'8" bookend tackles. You've got versatile, pretty experienced guards. I mean, El Hadi's only started 3 games, but that's worthwhile. He replaced Trevor Keegan. Yeah. And then you've got Crippen, who, again, might have been the guy the last 2 years if it wasn't for the success they had in the transfer portal. Yeah. So I like Dan's outlook. This could be a really good group, even though it's guys who haven't been out there a lot together.
The guards is where you don't look like you probably have much depth. I mean, you'll have, if it's Gentry, you'll have Percy at either one of the tackles if, if they have to do something there due to injury or, just to get some time in games. But the guards, I mean, you're going to have younger guys in there beyond those first 2.
And Gentry has worked at guard. So then, maybe, wherever your strengths are, if you want to put him inside and you get one of the younger dudes, right tackle seems to be the position where if you, I don't want to say you put your weak link there, but that's kind of how it usually works. Like, you don't need your best of the best at right tackle if you've got a right-handed quarterback. You can kind of get away with a guy. So maybe that's, they've talked about Blake Frazier and Evan Link and some of these true freshmen who have really stood up. I don't know. We'll see. But in my opinion,
pretty huge for a guard.
yeah, he's taller than your typical guard.
Yeah, he's like 6'7", 325. So that'd be a big guard.
But they're look at those big uglies, man. They're ready.
Yeah.
That's your group right there, I think. Preeby with the auto-generated image because he wasn't on campus yet, but all the other guys looking, dude. I mean, they're just those 2 tackles. They're so big. 6'7", 6'8", 3. I don't know. Gentry might be north of 325 too. I can't remember exactly how big he is, but they're hogs. And then you've got the guys who do have actually some starts under their belt at the guard spots, and then Crippen, who's just bought his time behind some really, really good centers. Is that group good enough to run the ball like we've seen over the last 3 years?
With Orgy under center, it'll make a big difference.
Yeah, I was going to say the way they're going to want to play will help them guys too. I mean,
yeah. I think I wrote something about that. I was talking about the running back room, but I'm like, you've got an outstanding 1-2 punch in Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings, and you've heard a little bit about some of the younger guys too. And then Orgy just adds such an element to everything with the running game if he ends up being the guy. I feel like that does make the offensive line's job easier when you've got a guy who can do it from quarterback too.
Yeah, I would like to counter that just slightly. I think a lot of opposing defenses are going to be expecting Michigan to be a run-dominant offense. So we're going to be going up against a lot of 7 or 8 man boxes potentially.
Yeah, and then you if you've got a quarterback who can make some of the easy throws, they're going to be there. So Gentry goes 6'7", 327. Let's see. El Hadi is 6'5", 318. I know Hinton is the biggest of the group.
Hinton's like 340.
Yeah, he's a house.
Yeah, he's like
Miles Hinton 6'6", 340. Which he's all of that. Preeby might actually be the smallest guy. He's 6'5", 305, and then who's the last one? Crippen. So every single guy's at least 305.
About that too, I think. 6'4".
Crippen 6'4", 309. So every single guy over 305 pounds, and who knows, maybe Preeby's a little bit bigger than that now. And so they're not lacking in size. I mean, last year I don't think he was undersized, but I know Drake Nugent, that was like one thing. They're like, he's not the biggest guy. They're going to be bigger than they were last year, which is crazy to think about. That's not always better, but when you want to just kind of run it downhill, it helps. And so You would think if you need to pick up 4 yards, you put Kalel Mullings back there and you let these guys, just push bodies forward. That's going to work. So I don't know. I am like Dad said earlier, I'm anxious to see that O-line. I typically don't. I don't know how you guys watch football. I think everybody does it. I don't even hardly watch the O-line when the game's going. It's just not where my eye goes. I'll go back and watch it on replay. They show something on the screen, I might look at it, but it's going to be hard not to pay really close attention to that group this year. And I don't know what we'll see in the spring game though. That's the big question right now.
It
One
usually
thing
is
that
a
we didn't
wild
bring up,
card.
talking about those guys that will matter or could matter. We talked about Sharon Moore not being their coach, and they got Newsome now, but Sharon Moore's still there. But Herbert being gone,
yeah,
I mean,
yes,
he's the guy they've had in there through the Joe Moores and that's it's kind of a big deal on the O-line. I mean, it's a big deal everywhere, obviously, but
he's probably the reason a lot of the Michigan linemen are as big and strong as they are.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys caught any of he did which I don't even know if it's typical. I know Harbaugh may have slapped another title on him, which is why he spoke. Or I don't know. I've never covered the NFL, but Herbert took the podium for a long time.
I saw
at something with the Chargers, and dude, that dude's a machine. He's like a Terminator, man.
Yeah,
it sucks so bad that they lost him, dude. It really does. I mean, the players have said really good things about Justin Tress, and he learned from Herbert, and he's just kind of taken over. But
he does not have that personality, though.
That's an elite dude right there. There's no doubt about it. He talks about making football players harder to break, and you want to play for that guy. There's no doubt about it. So that's going to be interesting to see how that looks for the O-line. Let's see. We will be back then, 3 days before the spring game, right? We'll be back on the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and then the spring game will be 3 days after that on a Saturday. So I don't know. I don't know what else is going to change from now until then. Tomorrow, not usually supposed to announce this ahead of time, but whatever. They're giving us some players tomorrow. And I actually can't remember who they're going to be, but I remember I think Zeke Berry might be one of them anyway. Yeah. So it's going to be cool to hear what he has to say after he was talked about by Lamar Morgan so much today. And again, it's kind of a common theme right now. The assistant coaches that are at Michigan, both with basketball and football, I think the sky's the limit for some of these dudes. Again, I'm not super educated on all of them, but I like what I've seen on the surface. So
Samaj Morgan, he's also speaking tomorrow.
We shall see. Yeah, Samaj Morgan was another one. I'm interested to see what he does in year 2. I don't. He's not an alpha like number 1 receiver, but you can get a lot out of a dude like that. And he obviously made some pretty big plays as a true freshman. So yeah, we'll see. Dad, that was part of your group that you really wanted to see, the wide receivers.
Right. Yeah. See who's going to step up.
Not trying to put you on the spot, Dad. I promise this is not trying to embarrass you because I have to think real hard for a second. Can you name another receiver beyond Samaj Morgan and Tyler Morris?
Colston.
Well, okay. he's a tight end, but he's probably going to be the best pass catcher on the team. But yeah, that's the point, though.
I know. A couple of them left, right? A couple that were on the team last year.
Yeah.
That's about who. The only ones Michigan's lost is a couple of receivers, but no, I can't actually.
Darius Clemens, who everybody was really high on, decided to hit the transfer portal. Omarion Walker, who was actually playing DB, but he also hit he was a pretty big recruit when they got him.
Right.
It's a bit of a thin group. Carmelo English,
I can't name anybody else
roster anymore, and I think he scored a garbage time touchdown last year. So yeah, I'm with you. I really want to see. Everybody wants to see quarterback. I really want to see the offensive line and how that comes together. And then the receivers and everything else is pretty set. There might not be a ton of depth. We might find out about the depth, but your number ones across the board are all pretty solid. So I don't know, man. Spring football is exciting. I want to go to the spring game. Dad with his Maker's Mark water. Eric's going to be on the sidelines. Hennigy might be back next week. We'll still see if Besaw is ever going to do this thing. I'm about ready to just write him off. Appreciate you guys for making it work at 8 o'clock and going for an hour and 10 for, again, over 500 people watching.
It's almost past my bedtime.
Awesome. So thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. We will be back again next week on the 17th, and we'll have obviously this one was pretty much about spring ball too, but it'll be very, very dedicated, maybe some fun stuff getting into the spring game as we move towards April 20th. So everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back in a week.